Hello and welcome back. In this video I'm going to have a look at how we can run crosstabs in Excel, and what I want to do is get to the stage where we can run them automatically and include filter options. Please note that I'm not going to use pivot tables, so pivot tables are another way of running crosstabs, but I'm just giving you a variation and something that you can set up and make it an automatic thing down the track. So I'm going to show you first what we're going to create. So I've got some data here, and this is a crosstab table, as you can see, and I've only got 5 variables. This one's showing dollar sales versus number of sales. So I want to build it that if I change that number there, it gives me another variable. So time since last sale, and all this changes. The crosstab changes for our 150 customers, and I can do the same thing here, and that becomes age. So it's just picking up the data, creating a crosstab. Down here, it's just the same crosstab with percentages. As you can see, it's duplicated. And then if we go across, this is actually the same crosstab, but it's only got 52 people because it's got a filter in it. So I go through and say, who do I not want to see in here? So I can go for that variable, which is time since last sale. I want to include those people now. So I go from 115, now I've got 138. So I want to be able to do this automatically. So let's work through how we do that. So hopefully this is the right video for you. So I'll go back to the steps. Step 1 is to structure and organize your data. So I've got some data, hypothetical, I made it up, and let's assume it's from our customer database. Now I've got 5 variables. You can use any number. You could have hundreds of variables here from your database. It's not going to matter in this system. And I've got a customer number there, and I've got 150 customers all the way down. And like I said, it's just made up data. But because it's made up data, you can see I've actually got numbers here. I've got dollar sales. Now if we go back to our crosstabs, I'll make that number 1. Dollar sales are in ranges or in buckets, and that's the first thing we need to do, because we cannot crosstab numbers in sequence like this because there are too many buckets. We need a situation where we can construct a table that is manageable and makes sense. So the ones I've got is 5 by 5. You can make them smaller, larger. It's not going to matter. Again, you can construct it in your own way depending on your data set. So I've got all the way across, I've got just the numbers. I've got age, for example, and I need to put that in buckets. And that's what I've done here. So let me show you how I've done that. What I've done for each variable is to set up the buckets. And this is going to be using lookup tables. So if I come back to here, you can see customer 1. That's a coding I'll look at later. But they're going to look up D6. So D6 is the amount. So look up D6. How much have they spent? How much we got from them in this range called sales. Now, I'm assuming you might know, but if you don't, I have set this here to sales. So I've named that range. So if you want to name a range, what you do is you go highlight it. I've already done it. But if you just type in up here what it is, it becomes named for you. So if I just make something up there, I could name this test. And when I highlight it, you can see it comes up test. If I just click on it, it comes up the cell number, Q8, but that is actually a range. So I'll just take that out because I don't need that. So I've named that sales, I've named that number of sales. So I've gone through my variables and just created the buckets. And then I've got a code of 1 to 5, which of course I'm using 1 to 5 boxes here or buckets here. So that's why I've done that. And what I've done is then go, okay, look up the amount, $3,000, as we can see, and look it up in this list. So what it does, and that's the formula, just look it up. I'm using a name range because I can just copy this formula down without having to worry about whether we're in the right space. and it goes 3,000. Is it more than 0? Yes. Is it more than, say, $1,000? Yes. Is it more than that? 2,000? Yes. Is it more than $3,000? Yes. Is it more than that? No. Go back. Give me that number. And it gives me a number 4. Okay. And the second one there is $1,500. And the same thing happens. Is it more? Yep. Is it more? Yep. No. Is not. Go back. It's in that range. It's in. You are between that and that number. Give me a 2, which is that. So I'm getting this coded all the way through. So these formulas here, this just looks up E6, which is number of sales. This one here looks up F6, which is time, and time as a customer, last sale, and then an age group. So all that's happening, if I look here at age, again the same thing happens. I've got this called age. The formula carries down, and it says, okay, are you between 0 and 30? Yep. Are you between 30 and 40? Yep. So that's what I'm doing first. Now I've got my data. Okay, and what I've done is I've called this my data set. Just called it base data. You can call it whatever you like. I'm just making up names. So this is my customer data now structured into buckets. Okay, and just let you know what I've done over here is just taken these labels and put them into a table because I'm going to be using them here to construct my labels for my output. Okay, now we want to look at, once I've got my data, I'm going to go to something called crosstabs. And what I'm doing here is I want to get that data for 2 variables. So here, variable 3 and variable 4, and I want to look at those, or I want to look at variable 5. So I've got to pull that data from all this base data I have here now in buckets, and I'm just doing that on a separate tab. You don't need to, you can do it on the same tab, but I just like to keep things in sections so they're easy to follow. Okay, so what I've done is this just picks up here. 4 and 5 is just coming here. What do we want to know? I'll change that to 3 so you can see how it changes. So that's just a connection. So it says plus output, which is this tab here, B6. And then it's as I change it on the other sheet, it automatically changes here. So I don't do any changes here. So I've got all my customers 1 to 50, and I'm just picking up the number from here. So time as a customer 455. As you can see, time as a customer 455. If I make it age, again I come over here to do that. Put the wrong number in, it won't work. Age. I come back here, it's picking up 541, and so it's 541. So we're just picking up the column that we need. And the way we do that is we use a lookup table. So lookup B5, so look up customer number 1 in the base data, which I explained to you what that was before. So this part here, C2 plus 1, so C2 is number 4, and here I'm looking at D2, which is number 5. So I'm looking up the variable, but plus 1. So what that does is how many columns across do we go? So this one will go across 4 columns plus an extra 1. If I come back here, it goes, okay, I want variable 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, this one here, but I want you to go across 1 extra. So go across 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me the data from the 5th column for customer 1. Okay, if I change this back to a 1, we come back over here, it's saying give me the data, this one here, for column variable 1 plus go across 1. The reason is there's no data here, it's just a customer number. So I go 1, 2, give me the 4. And the 4 is dragged in here. Okay, so I'm just extracting that data. Okay, the next step is to work out how we put this, count this data in these cells. Okay, there's some zeros here because I've got a filter on at the moment. And what I'm going to do is I've just built this over here. They're just numbers. And what I'm doing is actually numbering each cell. So this is cell 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then I go to 21, 22, 23, go across. So these cells are effectively numbered on that basis. So they're the 25 cells that I have, and I've given them a code. If you have more, you might want to get maybe 36 cells. You could go across one. I would suggest that that's probably your limit, because you do not want a crosstab where you even get to 7 or 8, where you've got 50 to 64 cells, crosstab cells to look at, so not great. Okay, so what I do is I've got to turn these two variables into where it should fit in the cell. Okay, so what I do is simply give me the first variable, times it by 10, so that 4 becomes 40, and then add the second variable, which is 44. So that means that this person will sit in that cell. Okay, this 5, 2 becomes 52. They will sit in this cell. So let's have a look at the data and what's happening here, because all it does is, I'm working out how many we got, what the code is, and I'm counting them up here. So I'm going to count cells. So I've called all of this cells, if I show you what it is. Okay, so all of that is just been labeled as cells. So I said count how many are in that. So M7 is that one there. How many 11s are up here? And they've got one of those. How many 21s are there? We've got 2 of those. Okay, so that's all I'm doing all the way through. So let's have a look at somebody. What I'm going to do is just change this to age, because it could be a little bit easier to follow, and make this dollar amount. Okay, so we go to our data, and we see for the first person, they're in the range of $3,000 to $4,000 in that bucket, and they're over 60. So we come over here, they go into cell 45, which is down there. Okay, if I come over here, they have been included here. So bang, 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 yep, they're over 60, and they're in that range. They've been counted in that cell. If we looked at the next one, they're $1,500, so between $1,000 and $2,000, and they're in their 50s. How have they been treated? They've been placed into cell 24, which sits there. They're one of those 6 people. We come over here, they are there. So they're between, yep, 1,000 and 2,000, and they're over 55. So that's probably one of the easiest parts of this. Once our data is set up, actually allocating to a cell is very, very easy. So that's all that's happening here. Okay, and then I can total those up. These are just totals, and I can then create percentages. As you can see, that's just a percentage of that number divided by that number all the way down, and I copy that so it doesn't change. You can see the dollar signs around the back there. So let's escape out of that. Okay, so now I need to pick up the labels. So the data is actually quite straightforward. I now need to pick up the labels. So I'm just picking up from the table over here. I'm just picking it up from here. Okay, and this is coming from a lookup table. And I also do the same thing for this variable here. So I'm looking up that number again, looking across. So it's 5 plus 1, so column 6. So go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look up 6, and then jump up and tell me what that is there. So you could do it that way. I'm assuming you know how to use lookup, but there's lots of videos online if you want to set up that formula. So that's giving me the titles, and I'm just, through a couple of formulas, just putting that across. And then I need these labels. So again, the same thing here. I'm picking them up here. So I'm using a VLOOKUP. So if I just bring it up for you, find variable 1. All right, so variable 1 is going to fit here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've just labeled that 1 to 5. Find what that is in labels. So if I go back to my data and type in labels. I've actually named that as well, and that's just here. So I've constructed a table, and I've just coded it just in case I needed it, and I've got all the data in there. So what it's doing is it's looking up variable 1 in labels and give me again that one plus the next one. Okay, and then I carry down. Okay, so for this one, I want to find dollar sales and I want to find age. So it's going to go, give me variable 1, go across 1, so give me those, and then go across 5 plus 1, give me those. So you can see that they are dragged in again. Okay, so I'm just bringing the data across. That's all I'm doing. Now, this data is easy because it runs down, so I can just, it's just that plus that all the way down, and I just copy that across. This one here has to run across sideways, so it runs across the top here. So I need to transpose this. Okay, so this is a little bit more tricky formula, so I'll just show you this one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I highlight 5 cells running across the spreadsheet, and then I'm going to come up here and actually type in transpose. You can see it there, and it's asking me what I want. I want those 5 there, so I've got to have the same numbers. I then close that, and then I go Control Shift Enter. Okay, and it creates this extra brackets around. So as that changes, so we're going to change age, and you'll see that this changes. So make that something else, and come back, and you can see that's now time as a customer, and that's all changed. Okay, I've just done the second version because to show you. So I just take that out, and then that's it. We have completed our crosstab. So now we can just crunch through analyzing whatever we need to do. And if we have hundreds of variables, we can just spend days analyzing. So this is really an analysis tool that's going to allow you to crunch through a lot of crosstabs. So once you've set this up, it's a really handy tool. You can drop other data into it, and maybe you might need to rename your data or something like that, your ranges. But this becomes a very powerful tool, and you can see how quick it is, as opposed to sometimes playing around with pivot tables get a bit tricky and confusing. Okay, let's talk about the filter. So now over here I've got filters, and I've set this up. What do I want to include? So I want to filter on age. Okay, that's all changing, and I want everybody in except for people over 50, and you can see these numbers over here are changing. This table here is not changing because that's everybody. This one here is changing because we're taking certain people out. Okay, so the numbers present differently. So I've built this one where you've got 2 filters. You can build as many as you like. There's no end to it. So how do we do this? Okay, so we come over here. I've built a separate tab here. Again, we've got our customers. I'm picking up here, what do we want to filter on? So these 2 inputs here. So I'll make that number 2, so 2 and 3. So this is just picking up from the filtering page or the output page. And then it's just bringing in the data, just as we did before. So I've got the data here for that, data here for that. So it's just coming from the data page and coming across in buckets. And then I go, do I want that? Is that a yes or a no? So some of these are yeses, some of them are no's. So I've said, okay, to simplify this, let's have a look again at age, which is an easy one. And let's assume that we don't want people over 60, and we'll put everybody else back in at this stage. So let's go back to what's happening here. And I don't want the first person. I want the next 3. I don't want the 5th person. So we go back to our data just to confirm that. I don't want them because they're over 60. Yes, 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 no, no, yes. So you can see what it's doing is just bringing in this code. So all that's happening is look up D6, which is the age bucket, and look up whether I want them. Okay, so I'm here, all I'm doing is picking up from labels. So I'm picking up the labels again, and I'm picking up this code. So all I'm doing is, this is the 4 yeses and a no. That's just a formula coming across, and I'm picking up the labels just as I did before to construct the cross tabs. Same formula here, and I just, so I can see it all together. And then I'm going, okay, do I want them? Yes, no, so they're out. So what I do is I then construct a formula to say, okay, if we have 2 yeses, I want them. If we have a no somewhere, I don't want them. So the formula is if and, so there's 2 conditions. If E6 is equal to G3, so is equal a yes, fantastic. If F6, which is this one here, is equal to yes, fantastic. If not, give me a 0. So when I put that formula in, there's a yes, no, 0. Double yes is a 1. The only way you get a 1 here is a double yes. Okay, so everybody else, because there's 2 filters operating. Okay, so we've got to keep that in mind. If I have a look here, once I put a second filter in, okay, some people are going to disappear. So I'm going to say I don't want people. We have a limited number of sales. That's 73. You can see that number is dropping. Okay, so I come back to the filter. You can see I'm taking people out. So double no is out. Anywhere there's a no, they're out. And then what I'm doing now is if they are equal to 1, so if I want them, give me cross tabs E5. So I just come back here and say, well, give me their code. What cell do they fall into? Okay, here is what we're filtering out. So the second person, 35, 45, 35. These people are in those cells. So they continue on. Everybody else has been constructed as a 0. Here I have my labeled cells again, my codes from 11 all the way across for the boxes, and then I just go count filter. So I've just called this one here, sorry, filter, if I put that up. So I'm doing exactly the same thing as I did before, except I've done the extra step and say, okay, if I have a no against any of these customers that are out, and so when you count them, they don't count. And then I go, okay, for this data here, just as I did before with the crosstab, count them up. So 111108 comes across. And we look at here and we can see it's appearing. And then I could do a percentage number or whatever I wanted to do. And again, I've built 2 filters. I've automated it here. And this data comes across into this calculation, and we're done. So this is a very, very powerful way of analyzing. As I said, might take you an hour or so to set this up, but it can handle any scope of data, any number of customers, tens of thousands, and obviously any hundreds of variables because of Excel's capacity. And then once you've built it, you can just keep adding data or have a template that you can use to drop new data in. And, obviously you have to set up your labels, etc., which is over here. You have to set up these terminologies, but that's the only modification you probably need to make each time. Obviously, I've done range, named the base ranges, etc., the scope, so the base data. So I've labeled that. So if you make that large enough, all you'll ever need to do is modify these. So you could be reviewing lots and lots of things. Now the beauty of this, as opposed to pivot tables, is that anybody can do this. Once you set it up for somebody in marketing or an analyst or a researcher, it's done. You cannot give customer data or market research data to a marketing person who is not confident in Excel or rarely use Excel and go, there you go, analyze the cross tabs using pivot tables, because they need to be fairly confident in research and Excel to do that. And this way they can just sit there and go, that's interesting. Like I said, I've got 5 variables, but if they had hundreds and go, oh gee, what if I took these people out? What if I added these back in? What's the difference? And you could do a table that actually compares the difference. So this becomes such a powerful tool. Now, I have a template that is even easier to use. I would suggest using this because you tailor it to your own needs. But I've got one, there's a free template in the link below as well, that may be handy as well. So please leave any questions or comments down below.